Alex had always dreamed of visiting New York City, but he hadn't expected his adventure to come with such a daunting challenge. As he stood in the middle of a bustling street, surrounded by towering skyscrapers and the constant hum of traffic, he realized something crucial. He was completely lost. The day had started perfectly. He'd left his hotel with excitement, eager to explore Central Park and its iconic beauty. But now, hours later, his phone's battery was dead, and his map was tucked away safely back in his room. He scanned the crowd around him, searching for a friendly face, but the sea of strangers all seemed absorbed in their own worlds. Alex wasn't a native English speaker, and he had struggled with the language for years. He knew enough to get by in simple situations, but now, faced with the complexity of navigating an unfamiliar city, he felt his confidence waning. Why didn't I practice more? He thought, clutching his empty pockets where his phone had been. Okay, Alex, he muttered to himself. You've got this. Let's start simple. He took a deep breath and mentally reviewed some phrases he'd learned. Excuse me, can you help me? It sounded straightforward enough, but his nerves made it feel monumental. The crowd surged around him, and Alex hesitated. He tried to convince himself to take the first step. Finally, he spotted a man walking toward him with a brisk, purposeful stride. Gathering his courage, Alex raised a hand and said, "Excuse me, can you?" Before Alex could finish, the man brushed past him, murmuring something unintelligible. Alex froze in place, feeling small and invisible. The words he had practiced seemed to dissolve in his mind. But Alex wasn't ready to give up just yet. With a determined sigh, he stepped aside to regroup. He reminded himself that mistakes were part of learning, and even though this first attempt hadn't worked, he was still standing. Alex took a moment to steady his nerves, standing at the edge of the sidewalk as taxis honked and bicycles zipped past. His first attempt at asking for help had been a failure, but he refused to let it discourage him. He repeated the phrase in his mind again. "Excuse me, can you help me?" Each word felt heavy, as though it carried all the weight of his insecurities about speaking English. The crowd moved like a river, and Alex felt as though he were standing against the current. Determined, he scanned the faces around him, looking for someone who might be more approachable. Spotting a woman in her mid-30s holding a coffee cup and walking at a slower pace, he decided to try again. This time he would speak more clearly and confidently. "Excuse me," he called out, his voice slightly louder. The woman slowed, turning her head toward him. For a split second, Alex felt a surge of relief. But as he opened his mouth to continue, her phone rang, and she raised a finger apologetically before answering the call and walking away. Alex sighed deeply. This was harder than he had anticipated. He was lost in both the city and the language, and every failed attempt seemed to magnify his frustration. He leaned against a lamppost and tried to think of a new strategy. Perhaps it wasn't just the words he was using. Maybe it was his tone or body language. He decided to rehearse. Out loud he practiced. "Excuse me, can you help me? I need directions to Central Park." He spoke slowly and enunciated each word, his voice rising slightly at the end to convey politeness. Nearby, a few passers-by gave him curious looks, but Alex didn't let it bother him. This time, he approached an older man with a kind face, dressed in a tweed jacket. "Excuse me, can you help me?" Alex asked, his voice steady but cautious. The man paused, tilting his head as though considering the request. Alex felt a flicker of hope. But then the man smiled awkwardly and said, "Sorry, no English," before hurrying on his way. Alex groaned. No English in New York City? The irony wasn't lost on him, but he couldn't dwell on it. He needed a new plan. Clearly, finding the right person to approach was as important as choosing the right words. He decided to look for someone standing still, someone who wasn't in a rush. His eyes landed on a young woman sitting on a bench, scrolling through her phone. Alex felt his courage returning as he rehearsed the phrase one last time in his head. This time he was ready to try again, determined to finally make progress. Taking a deep breath, Alex approached the young woman on the bench. She was casually dressed, with earbuds in, but her posture seemed relaxed. He stopped a few steps away and said clearly, "Excuse me, can you help me?" The woman looked up, pulled out one earbud, and smiled. "Sure, what do you need?" she said warmly. Alex felt a rush of relief.
Someone had finally responded positively.
Carefully, he said, I need to find Central Park." "Oh, Central Park," she repeated, nodding as though to confirm. "It's not far from here. Go straight down the street for 3 blocks, then turn left. You'll see the entrance right there." The instructions were simple, but Alex wanted to make sure he understood. He repeated, 3 blocks and turn left? "Exactly," she said with an encouraging smile. "You can't miss it." "Thank you so much," Alex replied, feeling the words flow out more naturally now. "You're welcome. Have a great day," she said before putting her earbuds back in and returning to her phone. Alex stood still for a moment, replaying the interaction in his mind. It had worked. He had successfully communicated in English, and it hadn't been as terrifying as he'd imagined. As he began walking in the direction she had indicated, Alex repeated the instructions to himself. 3 blocks, then left. 3 blocks, then left. He visualized the path as he moved forward, feeling a growing sense of confidence with each step. The streets were still busy, and he noticed the signs and advertisements in English all around him. Encouraged by his small victory, he started reading them aloud in a low voice. Restaurant, pharmacy, subway station. Each word felt like a little piece of the puzzle he was putting together. When Alex reached the 3rd block, he looked around to confirm his location. The street was wide, and to his left, he noticed a sign pointing towards Central Park. A wave of excitement swept over him. He was on the right track. However, as he turned onto the next street, Alex hesitated. The area was less crowded now, and he wasn't entirely sure if he had gone the correct number of blocks. His confidence faltered slightly. He thought about turning back, but decided instead to ask for help once more. This time he felt less nervous. He had already succeeded once, and he reminded himself that the next interaction would be another chance to practice. Spotting a friendly-looking couple standing near a bus stop, Alex rehearsed his phrase in his head again. "Excuse me, can you help me?" With renewed determination, he stepped forward to ask them for assistance, ready to continue his journey. Approaching the couple at the bus stop, Alex felt a newfound confidence. They were casually dressed and seemed to be reading a map, which reassured him. They might be familiar with the area. Taking a steadying breath, he said, "Excuse me, can you help me?" The man looked up, smiled, and said, "Of course. What do you need?" "I'm trying to find Central Park," Alex replied, his words clearer this time. The man nodded and turned to his partner, a woman holding the map. "It's close, isn't it? Just a few blocks from here?" The woman traced a line on the map with her finger before answering, "Yes, but I think he needs to turn right at the next intersection, not left." Alex listened intently, picking up on their use of directional words. "Right, intersection." He repeated cautiously, "Turn right?" "That's right," the man confirmed. "Go 1 block straight, then turn right. Central Park will be about 2 blocks after that." The instructions were slightly more detailed than the last set, but Alex was determined to remember them. He repeated, 1 block straight, turn right, then 2 blocks. "Exactly," the woman said with an encouraging smile. "You're almost there." "Thank you," Alex said, giving them a small wave as he walked away. As he followed their instructions, Alex repeated the new terms he'd learned aloud. Turn right, intersection, 2 blocks. He imagined these phrases as tools he could use in other situations. While walking, he practiced forming sentences. "Where is the intersection? Do I turn right?" After a block, Alex arrived at the next intersection. He hesitated for a moment, looking at the street signs, and then confidently made the right turn. The street was quieter, lined with trees, and he could see the tops of tall buildings in the distance. He felt a sense of progress, not just in finding his destination, but in conquering his fear of speaking English. However, as he walked further, doubt crept back in. He wasn't sure if he had counted the blocks correctly. Alex stopped at a corner and looked around, noticing a newsstand nearby. He decided to ask for help again. This time, he wanted to add more to his sentence. Walking up to the newsstand vendor, a man in his 50s, Alex greeted him politely. "Hello, can you help me? I need to find Central Park." The vendor smiled and nodded. "You're very close. Just keep going straight only 2 more blocks, and you'll see the entrance on your left." "Straight, 2 blocks left," Alex repeated, committing it to memory. "You got it," the vendor said with a thumbs up. Relieved, Alex thanked him and continued his journey. With each interaction, he felt his confidence growing, and the once daunting task of speaking English started to feel like a series of small, manageable steps. As the trees of Central Park came into view ahead, Alex couldn't help but smile. He was almost there, and the journey had already taught him more than he'd expected. As Alex walked closer to Central Park, the sound of birds and the distant chatter of people replaced the noise of the bustling city streets. He could see the park entrance just ahead, framed by tall trees and iron gates. Relief washed over him. He was finally reaching his destination. But as he drew nearer, he noticed a fork in the path leading into the park. One route seemed to head toward a quieter wooded area, while the other, unsure which direction to take, Alex decided it was better to confirm than to risk getting lost again. He spotted an older woman sitting on a bench nearby. Her demeanor was calm and welcoming, and Alex felt confident enough to approach her. "Excuse me," he said politely. "Can you help me?" The woman looked. "Of course, dear. What do you need?" "I need to find the main area of Central Park," Alex explained, gesturing toward the paths ahead. The woman adjusted her glasses and pointed toward the bustling field. "You're very close. Just take the path to the right. Walk for about 5 minutes and you'll see a large fountain. It's one of the main spots in the park." "Right path, 5 minutes, fountain," Alex repeated to himself, nodding. The woman chuckled softly. "Yes, that's it. You're almost there." "Thank you so much," Alex said, giving her a genuine smile. "Enjoy your time in the park," she replied before turning her attention back to the pigeons. As Alex followed the right path, he couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. He had managed multiple conversations in English, each one building on the last, and every interaction had taught him something valuable. The language that had once felt like a wall now felt more like a bridge, a way to connect with people. After a few minutes of walking, the fountain came into view. It was surrounded by a mix of tourists and locals, children playing, and street performers showcasing their talents. Alex paused for a moment to take in the scene. The journey had been challenging, but it had also been rewarding. Feeling a wave of confidence, Alex approached a group of street performers and decided to practice one more time. "Hello," he said, smiling. "Can you tell me where I can find a good place to sit and relax here?" One of the performers pointed to a grassy area nearby. "Right over there. Lots of space and shade. Great spot to unwind." "Thank you," Alex replied, his words flowing with ease. Sitting down on the grass, Alex reflected on the day. He had not only reached his destination, but also overcome his fear of speaking English in a real-world setting. The park was beautiful, but the journey to get there was what truly made it meaningful. Sitting on the cool grass, Alex let out a long, contented sigh. Central Park was everything he had imagined: tranquil, vibrant, and alive with activity. The sunlight filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows on the ground, while the distant laughter of children and the strumming of a guitarist filled the air. But what truly made the moment special was the sense of achievement Alex felt inside. He took out his small notebook, something he always carried on trips, and began jotting down phrases he had learned throughout the day. "Excuse me. Can you help me? Turn right. Go straight. How far?" The words that once felt intimidating now carried a sense of familiarity. He smiled as he wrote, knowing these phrases were no longer just words. They were tools he had used to navigate and connect. As he reflected on the journey, Alex realized that every interaction had taught him something beyond just language. Each conversation was a step toward understanding, not just of English, but of himself. Looking around, Alex noticed a group of tourists sitting nearby, flipping through a guidebook. He hesitated for a moment, then decided to put his newfound confidence into action. Walking up to them, he said, "Hi, do you need help finding something?" The group looked surprised but grateful. "Go straight down this path and you'll see it in about 5 minutes. Thank you," one of them replied enthusiastically. "You're welcome," Alex said, feeling a surge of pride as he returned to his spot on the grass. As the sun began to set, Alex closed his notebook and leaned back against a tree. He thought about how far he had come in just a single day. The moments of hesitation, the initial failures, and the eventual successes all blended together into a meaningful experience. He decided to set a new goal for himself, to practice English every day, even in small ways. Whether it was reading signs, striking up a conversation, or simply repeating phrases, he knew that consistency would be key. Before leaving the park, Alex took one last look at the fountain in the distance. It stood as a symbol of his journey, not just the physical one through New York, but the personal journey of growth and courage. As he walked back toward the bustling streets, Alex felt lighter, braver, and more connected to the world around him. He whispered to himself, "This is just the beginning." With a confident stride and a heart full of gratitude, Alex stepped into the city once more, ready to face whatever came next, one word, one phrase, one step at a time.